Woohoo! Here we are again. Oh yeah.
Okay, good. So the picture now is much better. This is our second take for today, and to everybody who watched us the first time at 8:20 this morning, once again we apologize for the glitch. There seems to have been some problems on both sides, not only mine or not only Timothy's. It seems that the engineers on this application of the applications are working to fix the problems as well. And Timothy has also set up his virtual studio in a slightly different location this time. So hopefully everything will go better this second time. This is the 230th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One or one-on-one. So, and today we're going to talk about the tariffs again because the deadline is coming up. We're going to talk about the yen. There was a lot of volatility this past week. We're going to talk about other pressing issues in Japanese politics, issues that shape life and business here in Japan. Timothy, now it's on to you again.
Thank you very much. And once again, apologies to everybody for breaking off. There was just a lot of heat on the electrics and the breakdown that we had with the platform as well. So we're going to come back to you again. I think I lost you at about the 10-minute mark, Maya. And
Around
yeah, so now we're in the shade and I think we'll be okay. I wanted to tell you about some of the news that happened this last week that's really critical for us to understand where Japan is going, what's going on with the tariffs and the relationship with Japan and the regional neighbors, that sort of thing. But let me open up, as we always do, with the yen. The yen had a great shock this week. It closed out last week, you'll remember, at 160.42 to the dollar. And this Friday, it closed out at 144. That's a 12 yen difference that it's strengthened. This hardly ever happens. This happens once in a blue moon. It happened in for the yen to move that much in 1 week. It happened as a consequence of the Lehman shock. It happened as a consequence of the triple disasters in Tohoku, and it closed during the Asia financial crisis. This is an incredible thing to happen, and it's a suggestion, it's a precursor of other things that are just kind of teetering. We know and we sense about the tariffs. We understand about the inflation and the economy not doing very well here. But this is a really critical thing to watch. We always open with the yen because it is a thermometer read on what's going on with the rest of the economy. This strengthening of the yen, significant strengthening of the yen, suggests that Japan, the yen is being considered as a safe haven as flows by the tariff fears and global instability. Money floods into the yen and to the US dollar as a safe haven, and the more volatility there is, the yen begins to perform better. But I think there's more going on there. The Bank of Japan board member Takata made a hawkish kind of tone of voice this last week where he was advocating for rate hikes. Rate hikes are going to significantly impact. And I think the negotiations going on with Trump and his team and with the Commerce Secretary, the Treasury Secretary, also deals with the volatility and the disparity between the value of the dollar and the value of the yen. And that disparity kind of enhances the movement, and also enhances when there is volatility, it enhances that. There's also been some suggestions of intervention by the Japanese government. They do that from time to time to come in to prop up the yen. The yen breached 160. That's one of the marks. 140 is the kind of bottom mark between this band. The Japanese financial and treasury officials are somewhat comfortable with it. Not too much volatility, not too much speculation, but it breached 160 and they took action. Maybe they overstepped it, but it looks like there might have been some intervention by the Bank of Japan. We're not going to know that until they give us their monthly briefing. And now the market is just watching until Wednesday. That's when July 9th, the tariff deadline, the pause of the implementation of the tariffs is supposed to go in. The president has made his moves and pronouncements about, the Japanese are being a little bit selfish here. They're being a little bit reticent. They're not really negotiating. Vietnam came in and I gave them a sweet deal. So what's going to happen with Japan? All eyes are looking on that. But once again, a 10% move in 1 week for the yen is exceedingly rare. It was 12 yen this last week, and it means that something fundamental is shifting. It's not just a sentiment, so it's something to watch. The diplomatic calendar for the prime minister, he only had one significant visit. It was, I believe it was a state visit. It was the prime minister of Ireland visiting. The prime minister came, he visited the prime minister. It was something like a state visit. The flags were flying around the Diet compound. It was a 90-minute dinner. I imagine he paid his respects to the emperor and the empress. That doesn't quite qualify as a state visit, but he was here also to visit the expo, as everybody is when they come into town, and also to open up a very important the new embassy for Ireland. When he came to visit, he opened on July 2nd a new embassy, the Ireland House Tokyo. And so this is the new compound. It's going to house the residence of the ambassador. It's going to house the embassy and some trade offices as well. So it was a big deal for him to open that. It's in Yotsuya, where the ambassador used to be living somewhere in Hito, I believe. So now he's going to be living in Yotsuya, and that center of gravity for Ireland will now be in Yotsuya, not so spread out. Also, you might have recalled that the State Department's, can you turn off your mic, please, Maya?
Yes.
The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was scheduled to visit Japan. We talked about that last week, but it was canceled just recently, maybe on Thursday, due to the Gaza peace talks. So he is in Washington to handle that. He's still coming to Asia, but unfortunately, Japan and South Korea fell off of that agenda. And, this kind of falls on the heels of the cancellation of the 2+2. It was somewhat downgraded. They kind of cancel it. They did cancel it. But this was downgraded to a solo Rubio visit. But you can see that there's this gap, there's this distance that's beginning to grow between the United States and Japan. It's happening in a couple of places, and it's not a good news because it's somewhat suggestive of what might come on January 9th. And the President of the United States has already said he's not going to extend it. He's going to stick to it. And if the Japanese can't come to the table with a serious offer or a counter offer, then they will get a letter. So the implications here are that Washington's gaze has somewhat shifted. It's pivoted a little bit towards the Middle East. And this could be interpreted as a missed opportunity for Tokyo. Tokyo is a little bit on its back heels, and so we just have to wait and see. But this next week is going to be critical. We always say that this next week is going to be critical because every week the agenda just keeps moving so briskly forward. Things that we were talking about 2 months ago are not the things that we're talking about now. The pace has just really increased. On the domestic agenda for the Prime Minister, on July 2nd, that was on Wednesday, he had a leaders debate. All of the party leaders gathered together. It was on NHK, a long briefing where each of the leaders talked about what their policies were. The election was going to kick off the next day on Thursday. And he came very focused with wage hikes, and he's going to increase the GDP to 1 quadrillion yen per year. It's now around 600, so that's a big leap. He's also promised that salaries will be increased by 100% by 2040. That's a long time away. He gave Nimaen 20,000 yen to everybody, all the adults in the country, just prior to the Tokyo elections. That was roundly criticized as a bit of an underhanded move by the LDP, exercising their power of the purse to try and get people to buy in and like the LDP. And it backfired, and the opposition parties just ganged up on the LDP and on the Prime Minister for authorizing that, saying, look, this doesn't do anything. It's giving people less than $200. What do you think that does for any family. It doesn't do anything. You should reduce the consumption tax, take consumption tax from the current 10% down to 5% or eliminate it completely, depending on which party is talking. So there's a lot of action that's going on there. On the 3rd, this was the day for the expo to showcase Japan. It was Japan's turn to do that. And the prime minister actually went to the expo to showcase Japan and to, a lot of fanfare and that sort of thing. And this is a big deal for Japan. It's a big deal for Osaka. Not such a big deal for the prime minister, but we're in an election. So he went down there. He helped, promote the Japan pavilion and a lot of fanfare. They're the host, of course, obviously. But he also went to Kobe to kick off the campaign that started that day. So it is instructive that on the day the campaign started, the prime minister went to Osaka for the Osaka Expo. And then he went to Kobe to talk about, the election and the candidates that are in Osaka and Kobe and in that region. And I think, once again, he's hearing a lot of pushback from this 20,000 yen cash plan. His approval rating, you remember, it was dallying with 30%. It shot up during the Koizumi appointment as Minister of Agriculture. It went almost as 36%. It's currently now at 34%. Not a great place to be during an election, but he's seen how he can pull a rabbit out of the house. The upper house campaign, if you live in Tokyo, probably if you live anywhere in Japan, that the upper house campaign has started. Half of the upper house, that's 125 members, are up for grabs. So it began on the 3rd, which was Thursday. July 4th is Friday. The election is on the 20th. So the 20th falls on a 3-day weekend. The LDP typically does a little bit better because people who vote for the LDP are more dedicated to the LDP. A lot of the other parties, except for Komeito, a lot of swing votes are considered. There are not a lot of card-carrying. There are card-carrying members, but the LDP is by far the largest, and then Komeito. But these are committed voters. And when the weather is inclement or it's an inconvenient time, or, people just normally are a little bit unenthusiastic about elections, generally speaking. Although, as I say that, I've got to point out that the voter participation for the Tokyo elections just 2 weeks ago was about 47%. That's very high. So the 3-day weekend, Marine Day is a Monday. That's a national holiday, and voting takes place on Sunday. A lot of people are going to be traveling. They're going to be at the beach. They couldn't be bothered. But if you're a true LDP person or a Komeito person, you're typically going to vote. The thing to watch here is that LDP and Komeito, of the 125 seats that are open, they must secure 50. They've got to secure 50 seats in order to maintain their majority. Most people say that they can do it. There was a Bunshun article. Bunshun is the magazine. It's not a scandal rag, but it comes out every Thursday, and it talks about, industry. It talks about entertainment. It talks about movie stars. It talks about politics. But its bread and butter is scooping scandals throughout the country, not just politicians, but it is known as a prime minister killer. That magazine is. They came out with a real harsh prediction that the LDP is going to look as bad as it looked when the lower house election, and the LDP lost 13 votes below what's required for their for the majority in the lower house, even combined with Komeito. So Bunshun is predicting that they will not reach their 50% margin, and they will be underdogs in the upper house and the lower house. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to get kicked out and that there's going to be a change of the cabinet or the change of the prime minister. The LDP will also still be the largest political voice. It will compete with the Constitutional Democratic Party, but if they combine their forces with other opposition parties, then yes, they'll be greater than the LDP. But when it comes to electing the prime minister, the LDP always promotes the president of the LDP, and that's the most votes that they would get in a plurality. Nobody's going to get 51%, and the objective is not 51%. The objective is to get the the most votes of everybody else. So even if there was a bad result for the LDP in this upcoming election, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a cabinet reshuffle or that even we will change prime ministers. The other thing to watch in this current campaign for the upper house is Sanseito. It is really gaining attention. It's running in all 74 prefectural seats and on the proportional representation seats. Even the LDP doesn't do that. The LDP has relinquished some seats. It won't run a candidate because Komeito is running there, or it's not running a candidate in a district that it knows it's going to lose, so it just withdraws that and it conserves its energy. Sanseito is running in every district, so that's a lot of people. So they are picking up people who maybe are a little bit on the bell curve one way or the other. They're growing incredibly. They've got maybe 5 diet seats, 3 in the lower house, 2 in the upper house. They're a very small political party, but boy, are they on a bend. They're aiming to gain 10 seats. Of all of the 74 seats that they're running for, if they get another 5 or 6, they're going to be singing Dixie. 10 seats in the parliament, if you have combined in the lower house and the upper house, you have 10 seats. That qualifies you as a party. And when you become a formal party, then the government gives you money, they give you an office, they give you certain benefits as being able to achieve that. So that is their goal. When you talk about where they are in the political spectrum, they are right of the LDP. So if you're looking for a more right-winged party than the LDP, it is not the Democratic Party for the People. It is not Ishin. It is not the Constitutional Democratic Party. It is this party, Sanseito, and they are really generating a lot of controversy because of their right-winged stance. But it's not quite LDP light. But there are a lot of people in the LDP that aren't going to vote for the LDP. They're sick of it. They're sick of the money in politics. They're sick of all of it, a lot of other things that are going on. And so it looks like Sanseito could pick up a lot of those if people are they're sick of listening to Mr. Tamaki. They don't trust Mr. Noda. Ishin is kind of fractured. They might go to Sanseito. So there's it's really going to be something that's interesting. Maya, are you waiting for me to give you a pause?
I was waiting for you, but it seems that there will be no pause, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Just I want
Okay.
to say to everybody once again, thank you for joining us for a second time today. And well, this is Timothy Langley, the CEO of the longest standing government relations and public affairs agency here in Tokyo, in Japan as well. And if you are with us again or will be with us later, please remember to subscribe or hit the follow button or just leave a comment there or a question so that we can address them later on, if not today. And again, we are very grateful. We appreciate your time and we apologize for this glitch. And we tried to solve the issue as soon as possible. So that's why here we are again with Timothy. Once
And
again, over to you. Yes?
And we came right back to you. So yes, we had a glitch. You can see I'm not wearing my suit. I was really hot in that out in the sun. I'm undercover now. I am anchored off of Ishiki Beach in Hayama. So the good ship Grimm's, I'm still reporting from the good ship Grimm's, but this is Ishiki Beach. You can see the beach houses there. There's a patrol vessel there, the cops circling, wondering what we're doing. But it's a beautiful day. And as soon as I finish this briefing, I will skedaddle. And that's why I kind of lost my, I forgot that you were waiting for me, Mike, because so I'm so eager to get through my talking points so we can get to the Q&A and I can raise the anchor and get back to my home berth in Chiba.
Right. I hope the cops are not after you, actually. So,
You see them? That's them back there.
right. Yes. Now let's go back to the briefing.
Okay, great. So I've got just a couple more points to bring up to the audience, and thank you guys for joining us every week. So the Trump deadline is on Wednesday. Trump said no extension, and I doubt there'll be a deal. The Japanese, they seem to be a little bit selfish. They seem to be reticent. I thought they would have a good deal, and we're trying to, make America great again, and they're not participating. So he actually threatened between 30 and 70% on Japanese autos and rice. Rice is a very delicate issue. Automobiles are also a delicate issue. Japan typically can produce the rice that it consumes. We did a piece maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Maya, on Japan's hidden nutritional issue. It was a policy piece.
It was, yes, Japan's hidden hunger. It was a policy piece. It was published on the website of Langley Squire, and also it went out through the newsletter of the company on Substack. So if you haven't received it and you're curious to know what it was about and what, well, the details were, let us know and we'll send it to you. Or just visit Langley Squire's website. It's there.
Right. So rice, although Japan produces typically enough rice for it to consume, it's doubling down now. The United States is saying, hey, why are you devoting so much land and human power to rice? We're producing lots of rice. We produce it more cheaply. It's more delicious. It's the best in the world. Why don't you let us import it? And so there's a bit of a battle going on there. Japan, and especially the LDP, their basic foundation of voters is the rural and the farm lobby. So they're very reluctant to touch rice. And that's why when the agriculture minister changed and Mr. Koizumi became the agriculture minister, the popularity of the prime minister shot up, and also the notoriety of Mr. Koizumi also enhanced, and it really helped the prime minister, as you can see from the appreciation that he's received over the last 2 weeks in polls that have taken. But it's still a difficult issue for the trade envoy, Mr. Akazawa. He went and came back from the United States during this week. He went there for a bit of an extended stay. Unfortunately, one of his counterparts was so busy, even though he had traveled with his delegation, he could only handle a communication with him over the telephone. So once again, you see, reading between the lines, that things are not going so splendidly with the United States and Japan. And the rice crisis and this policy reversal, Japan's rice has increased by almost 80% year on year. The cost of living shock, Tokyo's shifting policy to boost production after the years of suppressing production. So now their goal is to export 350,000 tons by 2030. So there's a massive change going. We've talked about it in the policy piece that we mentioned earlier, but the United States is pushing for rice imports. And this is maybe really causing a headache for Mr. Akazawa, and getting to a deal is going to be extremely difficult just on the cusp of an election. So if they don't tweak it the right way, the LDP is going to suffer as a consequence of that. Moving on, you might remember that the United States said that we're going to bind our forces. Japan and the United States, we're going to bind our forces. We're going to have a joint operations command. The leader of that just took up his post. It is located it's kind of located inside the Ministry of Defense, but it's also located in Akasaka, where Hardy Barracks is. It's not really changing the location from Yokota. That's where the main headquarters is. But, I think the joint command is about 240 people. And it doesn't look like they're going to be stuck in one location. The Japanese are going to be in Ichigaya, over by where my office is. That's where the Ministry of Defense is. And the United States will remain in Yokota. But I think the new Joint Operations Command for the United States will be located, or that portion of it will be located in Akasaka. So it's not really a realignment of firepower. It's mostly a realignment of proximity. So there was a lot of fanfare made of it. The United States and Japan were coming together. We're going to be able to jointly, take on China if they decide to go connect. And there's just, once again, this kind of backtracking. So it's symbolic coordination, but I don't think it's truly a strategic repositioning. So we're watching it carefully, and we'll report to you as the moves come. If I haven't gotten it right, and those of you who are listening have a better bead on what's going on militarily, please let us know, because this is pretty important. North Korea reportedly is offering missile components to Iran, including nuclear components. So this is causing a bit of a chill here. Pakistan also made some sort of suggestion, strangely enough, Pakistan supporting Iran in such a way as to put into controversy the fact that they have nuclear weapons and they would support Iran in their battle with Israel with nuclear weapons. This is really scary. Chinese carriers, we reported this last week, Shandong and Leipzig deployed beyond the first island chain in June. We reported that here. These are two brand new aircraft carriers. They've got that slooping up at the front where the jets take off and they kind of pop up. But they've been holding sorties and exercises, typically within the first island chain, but they're beginning to expand out. There's been a couple of incidences and near flybys, provocative flybys by the Chinese pilots, and the airspace incidents have been occurring more and more frequently near the Senkakus. So last week we reported the Japan-Philippines drills with the United States for logistics exercises and also Marines. The Japanese aren't really known for being island hopping fighters. That's what Marines do. But they've joined forces with the Philippines and the United States Marines in Okinawa to develop their own island hopping kind of defensive and probably offensive to retake land in the event that it is taken. They're also working really hard to export military armaments. They're very active on trying to sell Mogami-class frigates to Australia. This has been going on for quite a while. They tried submarines and lost out to the French, you might remember, a couple of years ago. That was really a punch in the gut because they had a real opportunity there. I think diplomatically they lost. Had they been able to secure the creation and sale of a fleet of submarines for Australia, that would have really made a huge difference. But they still are looking very carefully at how they can export military hardware that embeds technology, electronics, AI, and all sorts of things. They're trying to develop this as an industry, somewhat characteristic of what they did with the automobile industry. They've tried with semiconductors in Hokkaido and in Kumamoto. That will be coming online within a couple of years, but it's not immediate. So they're trying to pull all sorts of rabbits out of the bag because the economy here is really in the doldrums and they don't have a good antidote for getting it out. I'm going to leave it there, Maya, and we can go into the Q&A because I know the Q&A is the best part of this briefing where you also, everybody else participates in the generation of insight. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Timothy, for this. Yes, well, basically, I don't know how many questions do we have now because some of our right, some of our audience are already going about their day and doing tasks they do have on Sunday. So,
Like
however,
us.
like us, yes. Okay, however, so I have a question to you basically about the tariffs. Now the Trump administration is, coming up with the let's say, the talk about tariffs, which are not going to be just 25%. They're talking about, sorry, about tariffs that will be somewhere between 10 and 70%, depending on the country and depending on the negotiations and concessions, let's say, other countries are prepared to make. So what do you think will be the result for Japan? Because we have seen that the Ishiba administration has taken a harder stance,
Yeah.
and they're not ready to accommodate every single demand the administration of President Trump makes. So what do you expect to happen? Because the deadline is this next week. It's on the
That's
9th
right.
of July. We've got only
Wednesday.
3 days till then.
So rather than asking me what my take is on it, I think people listening to this briefing, they can draw their own conclusions. What's happened to the yen is suggestive of what's coming down the path. The United States came in, they 2+2, and then the Japanese canceled that. And the reason why they canceled it is because this 5-year plan, increase your defense from 1% of GDP to 2% of GDP. Mr. Kishida approved that. We are in year 3, and even before it's over, Mr. Trump comes back into office. Okay, so this increase was not done under his watch. But I think most pundits agree that Japan needs to spend more. NATO needs to spend more. The United States is carrying too much, and if it's really an America first policy, then the United States needs to do less and the allies need to do more. And Japan is a part of that. But going from 1% to 2% was huge. We spent a lot of time talking about that. And for a country like Japan to devote 2% of their GDP, I mean, they can't even produce offensive weaponry. They are forbidden by the Constitution to do that under Article 9. But to come back with 2%, and then the latest indication was 2% won't do it. It needs to be 3.5. And for the automobiles, they did have a tariff structure. Trump became president. He came back with the liberation tariffs, the Liberation Day. And Japan, 25% for automobiles, 24% for other products. And then there's reciprocal tariffs that we're going to implement too. That lasted, then he paused it for 90 days. And before that 90 days was over, they came back and they said, well, it could be, more than 25%. I mean, you don't seem to be really appreciating the position that you're in, and it could be 70%. So it's just one thing after another. And the distance between the United States and Japan, unfortunately for me, I can just sense this thing growing. And I don't think that there's going to be a breakthrough on Wednesday. And the markets are very jittery about that. And the economy is jittery. I mean, inflation and the cost of goods and the price of the yen, a lot is going on. So if you read the tea leaves well enough, and I know everybody on in our audience does that as a natural course of action, you can sense that there's really something significant going on here.
Right, and we've got a comment from Manabe-san. He says, be cautious about the impact of interest rates on Japanese government bonds and the sale of or reevaluation of your US government bonds.
Yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit in previous sessions, but of course, we also know that some people in the Japanese government have said that they're not going to use the American government bonds as
leverage.
As leverage, right? But as the situation evolves, do you think that this might happen? Because we know that the Japanese, when they don't mean to do something, things basically change as the situation changes. So do you expect that there might be something there as well?
I do indeed. Yes, I think it's going to be a little bit of tit for tat. We used to be buddies. Remember that? We used to go on picnics and stuff like that. And now look what you did to me. And this is what I'm going to do to you. And I think we're headed into that direction before there's a settling down. But yeah, it's just, who's the bigger dog? Right? I think they're both trying to say, you can't do what you want to do without us, and we can't do what, there's this mutual, and it's been formed over 70 years of trade negotiations and all sorts of treaties and just, backroom meetings. So this is really not a good thing for Japan, not in this economy. The United States, on the other hand, seems to be improving. The job numbers are looking good. The interest rates are beginning to fall into line, and inflation has not become an issue anymore. So there's a lot going on in the United States that bodes well for the United States. There's not a whole lot going well for the Japanese. They need to do something to make it happen, and that's why the military-industrial complex is one idea. What are they going to do with food and rice, and can they export rice and make money doing that, or do they, their food security is the number one issue. How are they going to do that? They can't even do it now. Japan produces 60% of what it consumes. It needs to import 40%. So it's not self-sufficient in a lot of areas. So maybe technology, chips, military armament, AI and medical research. We did a paper on medical research and innovative medicines just 2 weeks ago, Maya?
Right. 2 weeks ago, we produced a paper on the innovative medicine and the industry. And I think that was Diana Green actually mentioning back then that it is possible for Japan to find a new industry that can be a key economic driver even away from the military industrial complex, because the Japanese population is aging and it is aging faster than any other populations.
Yep.
But at the same time, the other populations are looking up to Japan to see what Japan is going to do because they're just, following, not
Right.
so
That's right.
very far behind. And in this sense of the word, maybe, military is not the only thing we need to look at.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Yes, very
Yeah.
much. Yes.
So
And
the
yes,
Japanese are pincered because not only do they have these industries that are not really developing, like, I mean, California, we reported on this last week. California, if California was a country, it would be the fourth largest economy in the world. Japan would be five. Japan's economy is smaller than California's. So, and they look at California. How did they do that? How did they get these startups? How does the money get created, and how do the kids come in and start these companies? We want a piece of that action. Tohoku University just got a huge investment from the Japanese government for a 20-year period to try and develop, these kinds of scholars, these kind of research papers, that sort of thing. They're really scrambling for it. That's why these policy papers that we continue to produce, they indicate those areas that the Japanese government has identified. We're going to try this one. But the problem is that the population continues to decline. Sanseito, should it become a powerful force within Japanese politics, doesn't like the foreigners coming in the numbers that they're coming in. They want, Japanese women to be at home and to raise the kids, and they're very conservative, far more conservative than the LDP. Manabe-san, I apologize. Last week you did ask about Sanseito, and I kind of dodged the question. I should have been a little bit more forward with you and tell you, let me look into it. I didn't know the ins and outs of it, but I kind of danced around it. I apologize for that.
yes, because parties like Sanseito, there definitely a move towards conservatism. And we have seen that not only here in Japan, we have seen it in other parts of the world as well.
That's right.
Particularly after the pandemic, it has been gradual, but even though it was gradual, it didn't take more than 2 years, right, to be seen. And here in Japan, yes?
No, globally, you're absolutely right. Globally, we see this pattern. We see this thing going on in Italy and then Britain and then Germany and Brazil and the United States. So to Japan remain kind of status quo, it's just not only is it unlikely given the dynamics that we have here, but just globally, there's this shift that just continues to go on. And it's very significant and it's very deep. And so I think in 5 years, the issues that we're going to be discussing are going to be very different than the issues that we discussed today. There's a lot going on under the surface.
Right. And also talking about the parties, the different parties, how they actually address their platforms, election platforms, and what do they say about taxes? So, of course, we know that CDP has said different things in the past. Now they are saying things that are 180 degrees opposite of what they wanted to do in the past. And some people, actually, some observers mentioned that instead of actually, you know, let's say foregoing taxes like
The
uh,
consumption tax.
the consumption tax, eliminating the consumption tax, Japan probably needs to go into the opposite direction and raise taxes. And since the general population is not going to be very happy, maybe the next step is to raise corporate tax.
Yeah.
So, right, so there are talks about this, but what, how do you see this tendency? Is it something that will be realized probably in the next 3 to 5 years, or what do you expect about this?
That's the United States went through the same thing. The big, beautiful bill that was just passed, it also increases taxes in certain areas. But the philosophy there is if you reduce the tax burden, it's not just the billionaires. They're being criticized. The opposition is criticizing the Republican Party and the president of giving gifts and reducing taxes for the billionaires. But the idea here is that the money that is released enhances the economy. And for the Japanese, yes, that's what many of the opposition parties are saying here. Some of them say just reduce the consumption tax from 10% to 5%. Or with regard to food, just eliminate it for food. You know, keep it with automobiles and household goods and other things. So every party has its different take. The LDP is saying, and they've gotten Komeito to kind of buy in with them. They didn't hammer down as hard as they wanted to because of their coalition partner. But they said, you know, we have to be fiscally responsible. We have to be the adults in the room. We're the longest serving government in the post-war period. There are other times when other people have kind of tried to come in, including Mr. Noda as prime minister. But we know how to run the business. And I think part of that is true. Running a government is not easy, and it requires a lot of muscle memory and having done it before. And we've seen the mistakes that have been done when people are experimenting with it. But the tax issue is a huge issue because of the inflation that's going on. People are getting more money as their salaries increase, but inflation is eating all of that up. And so it's just a rat race. People aren't traveling as much. They're not buying as many products. They're not taking vacations. You can see it everywhere. I mean, if you live in Tokyo, you can feel it. You know, the vibrancy of a booming economy is just non-existent.
Right. Okay, and we've got a question from Tommy Two Bats on YouTube, who
Tommy Two
says,
Bats?
yes, that's a handle name for sure. But yes, the question is, can you see a day where inheritance tax will be reduced or eliminated in Japan? I ask in respect to abandoned houses in regional areas.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a huge issue. Akiya is our abandoned houses. Japan has, I don't know how many millions, just Tokyo has several million abandoned houses. Akiya, you can come in, maybe you could come in and purchase them. Many of them have been vacant for a number of years, and sometimes they've still got all the household goods in it and grandma's clothing and the jewelry and everything there, because the family is continuing to fight about, you know, whose responsibility it is and who's going to have to pay the tax to demolish the house. And it's just a terrible issue. It's not just inheritance. Tommy Two Bats, I thought you were going a different direction with inheritance, but Japan's inheritance tax is really onerous. It's onerous not just to the Japanese, but it's onerous to the foreigners who live here. Maybe they're expatriates, or they earn a lot of money and then they move on. The Japanese inheritance tax can reach out and grab some of their assets even after they've left Japan. It is really, maybe I should do a piece on it. It doesn't impact that many people until somebody dies, and then you become concerned with it. People have told me, hey, Langley, why don't you know, you're such a big shot lobbyist, why don't you change it? And unless there's a group of people who are going to pay the salary, pay the fee for changing that, I'm not going to move on my own. So it requires a cohesive group of people that have an issue to change it. And people don't become cohesive because it's just disparate. You know, you die, or your dad dies, or somebody dies, and then you confront that issue for the first time. So it's a difficult issue. But with regard to Akiya, yeah, maybe I should look into that a little bit more. It's a burgeoning issue for a lot of foreigners. They want to come in and refurbish these houses, but you know, if they're a little bit older, then the timber that they use is kind of worn out, and maybe it doesn't pass earthquake standards. And if it's newer, they do have the standards, but they're a little bit more difficult to reform and a little bit more costly. But yeah, it's a huge issue. Thank you, Tommy Two Bats, for bringing it up. Maybe communicate with us and we can put together some sort of a policy piece on it if you'd like.
Yes, so yes, thank you very much. And also, there is some other news, Timothy, about the Japanese government willing or wanting actually to hold the control share package of Rapidus. And so, because this was initially, let's say, an initiative to get big Japanese corporations, privately run corporations, so that Japan could prep up its semiconductor industry. But
The small wafers.
yes, now the government is saying that they want to have the control package. So what are your thoughts on this? Of course, this is going to be, let's say, strategic industry for the
Yeah.
Japanese government. But Well, we also know that if something is controlled by the government, it most of the time it loses flexibility and the ability, of course, to act and react to market changes in a proper manner.
Okay, this is a great issue. Rapidus is in Hokkaido. It is building this very micro thin wafer fab, and it's not just Rapidus. It's a consortium of countries or companies, and it doesn't seem to me that that's a bad call. I mean, the United States wants in U.S. steel, they're going to sell it to the Japanese, but we want to be able to kind of control it a little bit. So we'll say it's a sale, but it's not quite, and we have the golden shares or whatever. So it does make sense for national security to maintain that, and for the Hokkaido project that does make sense. And typically, the Japanese policy is if they invest in something, the law requires them to have 33 and a third percent ownership. So that's what happened with Sakhalin 1 and 2. The Japanese government was invested in that and some other companies. But if the Japanese government is going to invest in a port or a forest or anything like that, they are required to maintain 33 and a third percent, because under Japanese corporate law, if you have at least 1/3, then you have a certain amount of power. Below 1/3, you don't have a voice. You're just like every other shareholder. But if you have a 30% or 33 and a third percent, then you have a voice. You can appoint people, and you have some power. It doesn't necessarily mean that the Japanese government is going to be in the boardrooms and calling the shots. It's just, they provide the money. At the time they provide the money, and they watch what the revenue is generating. But I think as a strategic investment, yeah, that makes sense to me. But I hadn't heard that they were going to do that. The other thing that happens, though, it's not just U.S. Steel, but you remember the three countries, Italy, Britain, and Japan, are building the next generation jet fighter, right?
Yes.
And now, as they're progressing on, and they're maybe 3 years into it, the jets will go into deployment in probably 2035, 2034, something like that. So as they're making inroads, as they're developing this thing, same thing with Rapidus, as they're getting closer to production, everybody's interested now. Everybody wants a piece of that action. Before, it was just a bit of a pipe dream. But in the advanced jet fighters, it's now become apparent that these advanced jet fighters, are basically drones. There's no pilots in them. I didn't know that when this story first came out. But now these advanced jet fighters, they're basically drones. The United States is not participating in that. It's Japan, Italy, and Britain. They're probably going to get some investment from Saudi Arabia. So that means Saudi Arabia will be, online to receive some of them. But the United States now is saying, oh yeah, those look pretty good. We'd like to participate too. And everybody else that sees how Trump does his negotiation, they're kind of backing off and saying, well, I think we're good. We'll get the Saudis involved, but we're okay with doing it on our own. So yes, the United States does have a bit of a reputation of wanting to be in charge of everything.
Indeed. Okay, thank you very much for this. And well, with this, I think it's time for us to say goodbye to everybody who came to watch the second take today. Yes, thank you very much for this. And thank you so very much for your patience with us and the issues we needed to deal with. We'll try to not fall into the same trap next time, even though there are areas which are beyond our control. And
Yeah, when you're broadcasting on a boat, the issues come up. I'm feeding off of the Wi-Fi that's from the beach area there, but also I think part of the problem, you might have noticed when we were doing our first take of this briefing, it was just very hot. I was under the sun, and the equipment was under the sun. It's now I'm in a different location. It's a little bit more covered. I'm not wearing a suit as I usually do. So yeah, we had to make some adjustments. But thank you very much for your patience, and thank you for sticking in there.
Thank you very much. And just one more comment about Rapidus in Hokkaido from Manabe-san. About industries in Hokkaido, the risks of the Hokkaido location have not been taken into account. There are risks such as the possibility of earthquakes. Yes, I believe so. And if we go further, there are some geopolitical risks there as well. even though I don't believe that anything is going to happen in terms of geopolitics there, but you never know.
You never
So
know.
you never know, indeed. Still, yes, Japan has to move forward, and Japan does need to find its next strategic industry.
Yep.
And maybe not only one, but at least two or three. And with that, we want to say thank you once again and have a great Sunday. Enjoy the weekend, have a productive week ahead, and we'll be here once again at 8:20 next Sunday. Please join us again and please be patient. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thanks, Maya. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.